Silence gives people a chance to think. Like, silence is really important. And even if you want to talk all the time, you want a chance to think. If I say something that I want you to think about, I should shut up after I say it. Otherwise, I'm keeping you from thinking about it. And some people find silence to be ridiculously respectful. And I didn't really appreciate the full extent of it. The world splits up pretty evenly into thirds in terms of how you approach conflict. And they're fight, flight, make friends. Assertive, analyst, accommodators. Who are good examples of each? Donald Trump is a great example of an assertive. Warren Buffett is a great example of an analyst. And I would say Richard Branson is probably a great example of an accommodator, a very relationship-focused person, very hope-focused person, like hope almost as a detriment to implementation, and almost always smiling and pleasant and friendly. So the world splits up pretty evenly into thirds. Now the analysts, I'm listening to Lex Friedman's podcast, and he's talking about silence, and Lex is a very analytical guy, and he says, there's a shared intimacy in silence. Like, if we can be silent together, I feel like I'm bonding with you. I feel like there's this great shared intimacy. And it never even occurred to me that an analyst, besides wanting the opportunity to think, could feel like they were connecting with me through the silence. And so, that's one of the reasons that it can be so valuable.
What about humor?
What about humor?
Yeah, like joking around with someone in a negotiation or in a tense situation. Do you ever find that could be beneficial and just lightening the mood a little bit? Or do you feel like sometimes it's more inappropriate than not?
Well, if it fits contextually, like, first of all, there's a difference between telling jokes and being humorous. And so if it fits contextually, not in a high intensity business interaction, like if I can make fun of myself with you, that's probably pretty effective. Like, I can make fun of me in a way that if you said it, I'd be offended. So if I get you to laugh with me at me, it's frequently very powerful.
That's really interesting.
It seems like a lot of the common thread that I see is just stripping away the ego and being very, very humble, approaching the conversation with humility, like laughing at yourself, saying, is it so ridiculous if I suggest this?
Yeah.
And kind of like softening the blow rather than, as you said, when you're providing advice, it kind of seems like you're establishing an inequity between you and the person you're talking to.
Yeah, no, that's well said. A lot of it is getting out of your own way, getting your ego out of the way, getting self-gratification out of the way. And then, softening the blow. So, I mean, you want me to tell you the truth. You just don't want to feel like it's a brick in the face.
What if they don't want you to tell you the truth?
What does that tell you about them? That's the issue. If they don't want you to tell them the truth, what are your prospects for a long-term relationship? Like those, and I'm a believer in long-term relationships of trust. Like if I'm a complete sociopath and all I care about is making money, long-term relationships of trust are more profitable than any other kind of relationship with the least amount of work. It's hard to come to that conclusion because, the big victories are celebrated kind of like winning the slots at Vegas. There's all sorts of celebratory things around big victories, and those are seductive, and you forget about how few times they actually happen. And I for me, in that context, I think the Vegas slots are a great example because I've read in reliable sources, not put out by the gambling industry, that the casinos understand the algorithm and they got to let you win at least once in every 84 pulls to keep you there. And so then all the lights flash, the bells ring, the sirens, like this massive celebration of the victory when in fact you fail 83 out of 84 tries. So the celebratory victories are like that too. They're very seductive. And when you realize that and you want long-term relationships where the money comes frequently without a lot of maintenance, that's how you make money. And so then getting back to your original question, what if somebody doesn't want me to tell them the truth? Well, the prospects for a long-term relationship here are very poor, and I value my time. So you don't want me to tell you the truth, then we're not going to last.
And what about verbal fluency in terms of having good dialogue, being able to, I guess, negotiate something? How important is that? I know some people, you've spoke with Jordan Peterson before.
Right.
He is incredibly verbally fluent.
Yes, he is.
He's able to just string his sentences together and articulate his thoughts incredibly well. Is that important at all?
How do you keep up with Jordan?
Like in terms of in conversation or just like?
Well, listening to him. How easy is it to keep up with him?
I can't listen to him on double speed, that's for sure. I mean, it takes all of my concentration to be on him.
It depends on the topic. I think, like if it's something that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, I definitely have to 1X it. If it's something I'm more familiar with, I can digest it fairly well.
Right. All right. So you're talking about a podcast, which is an interview that you can control the speed of and you can go back to, but live and in person.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's like the ridiculous shortcoming, which is why I love to listen to him be interviewed. His thoughts are so rich that live, if he says something that triggers your thinking,
right,
you're going to miss the next 10 things he says. And that's why I love listening to getting him interviewed. His interview on Lex Friedman's podcast is brilliant. Lex interrupts occasionally and asks him a brilliant question. Lex is far more well-read than I am. And then I actually just listened to him being interviewed at Genius Network just a few days ago by Joe Polish, my friend Joe Polish, and it's a great interview. And then having heard the two interviews, then of course I get to contrast some of the things he said in one versus the things he said in the other. So then that's the conversation to learn from versus a negotiation, which should be a collaboration. Now, if you get Jordan to slow down, you could take those skills and make a great negotiation, but you'd have to get him to slow down significantly.
It's interesting you talk about negotiation in terms of collaboration. How important is being able to read people when you're trying to find a common thread? Or do you think that that's just kind of like them putting up an abstraction of themselves and then you're not really negotiating at that point?
Well, I try to read emotions more than anything else. And then if I'm guessing, then I'll verbally guess. And I'll say, like, seemed like something just crossed your mind. Instead of, seems like something made you angry. Because I'm going to want to know what it is. So you want to pay attention to the that they are giving off physical clues to thinking. But you want to be careful that you don't assume what that clue is. You want to find out. So you should just be attentive. And then be willing to be corrected or enlightened or figured out. And then at some point in time, if you talk to somebody long enough, you're going to draw a pretty good bead on them. But it's going to take a while.